What's up? So welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a while since I made any of these tutorial videos, so today we're doing something really special. Today I'm going to teach you about shutter speed. Shutter speed is one of the most important settings on your camera that you have to know about. It is essential that you know what shutter speed is if you really want to improve your photography and your videography, and it doesn't matter what camera you shoot on. It's applicable almost everywhere. Now, shutter speed is one of the three components that make up the famous exposure triangle. If you don't know what the exposure triangle is, it basically consists of three components on your camera. One is the aperture, which is on your lens. The next is the shutter speed that you dial in on your camera, and the third is ISO, which is basically your camera sensitivity to light, which is also set up by you in your camera. So shutter speed, the setting, basically signifies how long your camera's shutter remains open and exposes your camera sensor to light. What you need to remember is shutter speed basically controls two important aspects in your photography as well as your videography. One is motion and the other is light. The longer and slower shutter speed is going to brighten up your image. It's going to let your camera gain a lot more light. It's going to make your image extremely bright, but at the same time, the caveat to this is the fact that any motion in your image is going to be extremely blurry, and you're not going to be able to freeze any of the motion that's taking place in your image. So what you basically want to do at this point in time, if you're shooting a really long and slow shutter speed, you want to make sure that your subject as well as your camera is extremely steady. Otherwise, the image is going to be really blurry. It's not going to be crisp like you would want it to be, and it's not going to look the best. Now, faster and shorter shutter speeds are a lot better when it comes to motion. They can help you freeze an image. If you're shooting action sports, you want to shoot a faster shutter speed, but what you need to know is when you shoot a faster and shorter shutter speed, your image is going to get considerably darker. Now, there are ways to improve this. You can make use of other settings such as ISO and aperture to get more light into your image. At the same time, you can also make use of external light, so just shoot in extremely bright conditions. So this should give you a lot more light. So these are the major factors when you're looking at motion and light, which are being controlled by shutter speed alone within your camera. Now, I mainly toggle shutter speed on my cameras. Two main reasons. I use a lot of my cameras to shoot vlogs like this and tutorials and YouTube videos like this. So one aspect is video. The other aspect of photography that I like to do is mainly street photography. I do shoot lifestyle and portraits and stuff like that, but I'm learning photography. I'm not a professional. So what I mainly like to shoot is street, because that's the experience that I enjoy the most. So for street photography, the ideal shutter speed I like to use is 1 by 1/25th of a second. It lets in a good amount of light, and it also freezes the motion within your shot, giving you a nice crispy image. But don't be afraid to mess around with the settings. Go out, take your camera, adjust the shutter speed accordingly, and see what works for you. Different kinds of photography will have different requirements. So if you're shooting in low light, you ideally want to keep a lower shutter speed. But like I said, you have to make sure your camera is steady. So it just depends on the scenario you're shooting. It depends on what kind of photography you're doing, and it depends on what setting works best for you. Now, I know a lot of video shooters out there are going to be really confused, because when you dial up your shutter speed to 1/25th of a second, it may make your image really dark. Well, to be very honest, for video, I don't mess around with my shutter speed too much. What I ideally like to do is follow the 180-degree rule, which basically means you double your shutter speed to your frame rate. We're not jumping to the 180-degree rule in this video, so stay tuned. I'm going to have a video on that in the near future. But basically, for video, you set your shutter speed and you just keep shooting majority of the time. Now, if you're a mobile photographer and mobile videographer, I know majority of the iPhone users out there have no way to control their shutter speed in the native camera app, but there are certain apps on the market that will let you control your shutter speed. One of them is Filmic Pro. Another major app is ProTake, and another app, the app that I love to use personally, is the Moment Pro camera app. It gives you full manual control on your shutter speed and ISO while giving you benefits of ProRAW and all of the other Apple computational features when you're shooting with your iPhone. And for Android users, I know Samsung and a lot of brands already have the ability to go into Pro mode within the native camera app and start controlling your shutter speed and your ISO. Basically, now in 2021, you do have the ability to control the shutter speed even on your phone. And when you're not sure how to set up your shutter speed, all you got to do is take a picture in automatic mode, go into Pro mode, or go into one of the third-party apps, control your shutter speed, and try and copy the exact same look. That's exactly how you're going to learn more about shutter speed and what settings is right for you. Long story short, if you want to control the amount of motion blur in your camera, and you want to be able to control the amount of light that's entering your camera and brighten up your image or darken up your image, shutter speed is essential. Ideally, I would suggest stop shooting in auto mode, get onto manual mode, and start experimenting with this setting. I hope you enjoyed this quick tip. I'm going to have a lot more photography and videography based quick tips on this channel in the near future, because I personally am a beginner filmmaker and photographer myself, and I'm learning as we go ahead. So I want you guys to learn a little something with me. Stay tuned for more. This is Nitin Chawla. See you in the next one. Peace.